My name is David Fournier, one of the instructors here at Restoring Grace, and thank you so much for taking your time to pay attention to some online classes that we have. I want to talk to you today about 3 steps towards spiritual transformation. Again, 3 steps towards spiritual transformation. It takes spiritual tools to build a spiritual building. And what I mean by that is that going and attending services and doing all the kinds of things that we often do, those are all great things to do. But what they don't do is they don't give us sometimes the tools that we need. And remember, if you have a tool in your hand, if you have a hammer or a saw or the keys to your car, those tools, that equipping that you have, isn't going to be any beneficial to you to stick the keys in the car, fire it up, and go somewhere. Or until you take the hammer and hammer the nails. You could sit with a hammer in your lap for an hour and a half and worship the hammer and say great things about the hammer, and maybe you have the best hammer around, better than the other guy's hammer. It doesn't matter until you actually take the time to go do it. So I want to take a few minutes and talk to you today about 3 specific steps, 3 tools you can have that will really help you on your spiritual journey. Number 1 is, I want you to remember this. You've got to bruise your ego. You have to bruise your ego. We spend a lot of time in defensive posturing, in moving around, in, defending our position. We defend our actions, we defend our mistakes, we defend our faith, we defend our doctrines. We spend a lot of time defending. We spend a lot of time playing the blame game. Working hard on making sure that everybody knows it wasn't our fault, or we weren't the ones that caused the problem. And this is problematic on many different levels. But one level that is problematic is on the level that says that it's all about that fighting, all about that arguing. At the end of the day, when you prove that you were right and the other person was wrong, what did you accomplish? Or were you not right at all? We often don't even know why we react. Why we spend the time reacting to things. You have to learn to bruise your ego. Now, I want to explain a couple things on this real quick. One of them is this, that transformation starts. Transformation starts when we are willing to bruise our ego, when we are willing to admit our faults, when we are willing to be forgiving. And one thing we need to remember about bruising our ego, and have you ever met somebody that they say, well, I am an expert in my field, and they think they know everything there is to know, and there's nothing more for them to learn? Well, that's a problem, because what can happen out of that is you can get to the place where you're so sure you've got it down that nobody can help you. I want to tell you, this is one of the tools to write down for your toolbox. Number 1 is, remember this, that anyone, any stature, any race, any creed, any color, any orientation, whatever you want to call it, anyone can be a messenger from the Creator. They could be a person who is bringing you a unique message from God, from the Creator, from the Master of the universe, and you don't hear it because you say, oh, that's a little person, or that's a insignificant person, or that's somebody that I'm not that worried about what they have to say. Remember, anyone can be one of those people that bring you that tremendous message from the Creator. Just a few days ago, I was sitting down with a colleague. She was not a little person. Somebody I consider extremely talented at what she does, and we were conversing on a couple of things, and she brought up a side message, just something off the side that she'd gone to a youth meeting, and somebody had done something at this youth meeting, and it started a whole line of thinking in my mind. And the good news is, whenever there's thinking going on in my mind, that means you're going to probably be hearing about it on Restoring Grace. So what happened was I started thinking and thinking. We weren't there to talk about that. I was there to talk to her and listen to what she had to say, and within that 20, 30 minutes, an hour, however long we were talking, this tremendous idea came to mind. Never would have heard that if it hadn't been for being willing to listen. Number 1, you've got to bruise your ego. I had a friend of mine who told me one time that what he does is he puts himself into embarrassing situations to see what he can do about resolving some of that ego problem. Like, for example, the next time you're at an ATM and you slide your card and you press the PIN numbers down, what I want you to do is I want you to get your money out and hold up your $20 bill and say, I won! And just watch the reaction of people. One of my all-time favorites and a good friend, Tony Campolo, told me the story about how that he actually was in an elevator. And he was going up to the 15th, 16th floor. And they all got on the elevator together, and they were going up. They got up to about the 3rd floor, and he started to whistle the song for that Bridge Over River Kwai, which is like, he started whistling this. And in the process of whistling this, other guys started whistling. And as the elevator stopped at different floors, different guys would get off, and they got all the way up to the very top floor where Tony was getting off, and there was one guy left in the elevator with him. And he looked at me and said, "Hey, are you getting on the same floor with me?" And the guy says, "No, I just wanted to finish the song." When you're willing to bruise your ego, when you're willing to take that shot and to put yourself in those situations, you can have a tremendous revealment of light from the Creator when you're willing to do that. Number 2 is you've got to banish your idols. You need to banish your idols. Let me ask you a question. What is it that you bow to? What is it that you bow to? You know, in the workplace, it could be very easy for us to listen to other people's ideas and other people's thoughts, or we had a bad experience 5 months ago, 5 years ago, 5 lifetimes ago, and say, oh, that will never work. And then somebody walks up and says, well, why not? Why won't it work? Well, it won't work because we've tried that before and it never works. That, my friends, is an idol. It's something that you bow to and you say, oh, this failure is my master. There are many obstacles that are stopping us from having direct connection with our Creator. I'm going to say that again. There are many obstacles that stop us from having direct connection with our Creator. So what's our mission? Why are we here? If our entire life is just full of all these distant and short-term obstacles and we can't get around any of these things, what are we here for? That's what we're here for. Part of our mission is to find these idols and remove them. If you remember back in the Old Testament documents, as Israel was making its way into the Promised Land, one thing that God would say over and over again is go in, find the idols, and destroy them. Even after they took possession, they drove the people out of the land. They conquered the people in the war. Israel was commanded to go in and take the idols down. Same thing we should be doing. Well, why? Why can't we keep them? You know, what's a little idol between friends? What's a little, it's just a little idol. He's only this tall. Or maybe it's something that we really like. Now, I'm not talking about your addiction to chocolate. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something that stops you from being you. Something that stops you from achieving the connection with the light of the Creator. We remove them because we're taught that they cause what's called klipot, or shells, or covering. And they block our sharing of the light. You see, this covering, this klipot, the idea is people say, oh, I've sinned and I can't find God. God's not gone anywhere. The light of the Creator hasn't gone anywhere. His glory in your life has not gone anywhere. It's simply covered. And it's covered in a way because of the coverings, the klipot that we put over it. And the more coverings we put over it, the less and less we can see that light to the place where our entire life has nothing but darkness. The sad thing is the light is present. It's simply covered. The third thing we need to do, number 1, bruise your ego. Number 2, banish your idols. And number 3, remove limited thinking. Remove limited thinking. We say this all the time, and we ascend to the idea that God is not limited by time or space. And fair enough. God is not limited by time or space. And we all say, yeah, absolutely, we got that. But let me ask you this, are you? Now you would say, well, yeah, I'm going to be 50, 60, 70, 80 if God blesses me, and then I'm going to die. True. Do you die? Yes. Where do you go? You're not limited by time and space. Your lifetime might be limited by time and space. But you are not limited by time and space. Our connection with the Creator is not limited by time and space. Our connection with the Creator is eternal, immortal. It goes on for eternity. Most of us as Christians totally understand this concept. We totally, yes, I understand it, but we don't live like that. We don't live like that. There's a story about a guy who's just this tremendous fisherman, and he comes back with fish after fish, and everybody tries to talk to him and find out what his secrets are, and he's not confident over. So one day this guy decides to follow him and see what the secret is. Now remember, we're talking about our limited thinking, how much we don't think God can get done. More to the point, how much we don't think God can get done through us. So he follows this guy out, and the guy walks along this long path. He gets to the lake. He has a little bitty boat. He takes the boat out a couple yards off the shore, and this guy's watching him, and he's just blown away by him. He throws his thing in there. He pulls up a fish. He pulls up another fish. He sees him doing something really interesting. Instead of taking the larger fish and keeping them, he throws those back and keeps the smaller ones. He's watching this go on, and he's watching, and all of a sudden he leans forward, to get a better view, and he steps on a tree branch. Crack! And then the guy in the boat turns around and sees him, and he comes in and says, "What are you doing?" He says, all right, you caught me. He said, you're the best fisherman in the town. Nobody knows how you do it. I'm here to get your secrets. I just want to know what you do. And the guy says, no, I don't talk about that. Oh, come on, please help me out. No, I'm not going to do it. He goes, look, I got one question. I saw you do something. Maybe you could just tell me about that. The guy says, all right, well, let me hear what your question is. He says, I noticed when you were bringing the fish in that the big fish, you take off the lean and you threw them back in and you kept the smaller ones. Everybody does the opposite of that. Is that what makes you great? Is that why you're a great fisherman? And the guy says, no. He goes, I've only got a 10-inch pan at home, so I just keep the fish that'll fit. And the guy's looking and going, dude, buy a bigger pan. How can you think like that? That is exactly how we think. We got our 10-inch pan. We've got our limited thinking going on, and we've got some pretty small desires for us spiritually. Pretty small desires for what we want spiritually. We have a poverty consciousness. I mean, you've heard that term before. I'm sure you have. We have a poverty consciousness. There are people who in the physical kingdom, maybe you're like me, where we're just eking it out. We're doing the best that we can, and we kind of live from check to check. We have to be careful that we don't take that poverty consciousness or that check-by-check living into our spiritual life. Kind of, for example, as the people that come to Sunday, and that's when they get their batteries recharged, and that's when they get their lives redone. We can have so much more. Now, when I talk about having so much more, I am not talking about fulfillment. I'm not talking about prosperity, and I'm going to have a bigger car, and I'm going to have that. You don't need those things. I mean, we can truly be content with where we are. What I am talking about is true fulfillment. The kind that when you go to bed tonight, you'll wake up with that same fulfillment. And as you live out your day, you'll have that same fulfillment. And as you carry on throughout your life, you'll have that same fulfillment and contentment, but yet you'll still have the desire for more light. Now, why would we want a desire for more light? We'd want the desire for more light so we can share more. The more that I have, the more that I can give. So I want to have that big desire for God to do things through my life so I can share that big desire with others. Most people in their life are just trying to fill their lives with enough to bring them back to the starting point, where they started at. Most people, let me say that again, are simply trying to live their lives just to get enough to go from here around here again. That's it. I want to give you a great story about this. And I want to read Psalms, I'm reading Psalms 84 to you today. There's these couple of guys, these executive type kind of guys, and they're out fishing on a beach. They're on vacation, and they're out fishing on this beach in Mexico, and they go out the first day, and they see these two guys in a little shack, and they're over there doing their thing, and they're fishing, and hey, that's kind of interesting. I wonder how the guys do that. And they come back the next day, and those guys are in their little shack, and finally 3 or 4 days go by, and the one guy says, I want to go talk to them and see how they live. So they go call the guy over, and they speak pretty good English and Spanish together. He says, look, he goes, what do you guys do all day? He says, oh, we come out here and we fish, and we take the fish back to our family, and we eat. He says, well, did you know you could have more? And the guy says, well, how would that happen? He says, oh, okay, all right. He says, what you would do is you go get a job, and in that job you'd earn money, and by earning money you could go and buy these things. Oh, okay, that sounds good. So what would we do once we have a job? And the guy says, good question. He says, well, if you get really good at your job, you can get promoted and you can make even more money from there. And this guy says, okay. Well, what could we do with more money? We could buy more fish. He says, okay, all right, that sounds good. He looks at his buddy. He says, that sounds good. He says, then what? He says, well, then, if you get really good, you become a manager, maybe a part owner, or you learn so much about the business, you can run one on your own. And the guy says, okay, well, then what would happen? He goes, then you would hire people, and they would come work for you, and they would help you make more money. They would make money too, but you would make more money and put more money away. The guy says, okay, well, what would I do with this more money? Oh, you could buy more fish. Well, sounds good. We like this idea. Okay, then what? The guy says, well, if your company is super successful and you've done a really great job and you've taken care of all your employees, what you could do is you could then have them running the company, you could be making the money, and then you could come out here like us and you could spend your days fishing. And the guy says, we're doing that now. Spiritually, we have to make sure that our goals and plans and aspirations that we have spiritually aren't just taking us from one point around to another point and we wind up in the same place. That's where I see the vast majority of people spiritually. They feel like they're making action. They feel like they're moving forward. They feel like they're doing things. But if there was a spiritual map that said you are here, it'd be the same place they were last year. It's the place they were the year before. And it's where they're going to be in the next 10 years after this. No fulfillment, no contentment. Remember, don't mistake activity for achievement. But you've got to ask those questions. Well, if I do this, then what? Well, then you get this. Well, that's great. And then what? And then what? And then what? And you find out that all those then whats, you find out you're in the same place you were when you started. That's not a spiritual path. That's a traffic circle. And you want to make sure you avoid that. So remember these three things. Number one is you want to bruise your ego. Take those embarrassing shots. Listen to everyone that contributes information into your life, because you never know what could be a message from the Creator. Number two, remove limited thinking. Man, don't settle for 5-inch fish because you got a small pan. Get a bigger pan. And number three is, excuse me for just a second. I want to make sure I got this one note going. Remove your limited thinking. And I missed one. I'm sorry about that. That's what happens when you get old. Banish your idols and remove limited thinking. Thank God for notes. Remember that a spiritual path isn't some place that starts you here and then you go full circle and you wind up in the same place again. A spiritual path should be one of constant elevation that keeps you going and going and going on your way up to the Creator. Let's read Psalms 84 together. How lovely your dwelling place is, O Lord of hosts. My soul longed and even yearned for you in the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh sing for joy to the living God. The bird has also found a house, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young. Even your altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. Blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are ever praising you. How blessed is the man whose strength is in you, in whose heart are the highways to Zion. Passing through the valley of Baca, they make it to spring. The early rain also covers it with blessings. They go from strength to strength. Every one of them appears before God in Zion. O Lord, God of hosts, hear my prayer. Give ear, O God of Jacob. Behold our shield, our God. Look upon the face of your anointed. For a day in your courts is better than 1,000 outside. I would rather stand at the threshold of my house than dwell in all the tents of wickedness. For the Lord God is the sun and a shield. The Lord gives grace and glory. No good thing does he withhold from those who walk uprightly. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the man who trusts in you. They go from strength to strength. Not circular and sillic and endless routines and getting nowhere, but a life of fulfillment and a life of achievement. My name is David Fournier, Senior Instructor here at Restoring Grace. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to our next time together.